my darlings. This is Mrs. Welch for the Cavendish Fletcher Community Library, and it's Western Month. And so we're going to be reading a Western storybook called Saving Sweetness by Diane Stanley. And this is a very sweet book. Out in the hottest, dustiest part of town is an orphanage that is run by a female person nasty enough to scare night into day. She goes by the name of Mrs. Sump, though I doubt there ever was a Mr. Sump on account of she looks like something the cat drug in and the dog wouldn't eat. I heard that Miss Sump doesn't much like seeing to the orphans resting or having any fun, so she puts them to scrubbing the floor with toothbrushes. Even the ittiest bittiest orphan, little Sweetness. So one day, Sweetness hit the road. I found out right away because Mrs. Sump came busting into Loopy Lil's salon, hollering like a banshee. "Sheriff," she yelled, that's me, "that provoking little twerp. That dear child Sweetness done escaped. Disappeared. And I'm fit to be tied worrying about that poor thing all pink and helpless, wandering lost on the plains and stepping in scorpions and falling into holes and such. You've got to bring her back alive, safe, before she runs into Coyote Pete." That did it. Scorpions were one thing, but Coyote Pete is as mean as an acre of rattlesnakes and the toughest, ugliest desperado in the West. So I got my star and buckled on my gun belt and headed west. It was hot as blazes. Seemed like the wind was too tired to blow. Then it got hotter. Hours passed, and what with the sun beating down on me, I commenced to feel thirsty. That was when I realized it would have been prudent to bring along some water. After some more hours, I began to stagger in the thirst, and the next thing I knowed, I plopped into the dirt. Fortunately, I was in the shade of a big cactus, so I decided I was going to stay there to catch my breath. Next thing I knew, I felt this cool, delicious water trickling over my tongue. I opened my eyes, and there, just a shadow against the sun, was little Sweetness with a big canteen. As soon as I was watered enough to make my words come out of my mouth, I said, "Why, Sweetness, thank heavens I've saved you." And she said, "Yes, sir, thank you. That little orphan is just as cute as a speckled pup under a wagon." "Now I've come to take you home," says I. "I don't want to go home," says she. "I'm tired of scrubbing floors with a toothbrush." "What can't be cured must be endured," I told her. Now I thought this was very wise advice, but the orphan didn't seem to think so, because she lit off like she was trying to catch yesterday. That day was going from bad to worse. Now I was going to have to save that orphan again. Also, if you know anything about the desert, you know that when the sun goes down in all its glory, it starts to cool off, and then it gets right cold. Also, the snakes come out. So I headed after Sweetness, all shivered and wishing I'd thought to bring a blanket. I got to feeling a trifle hungry too. Seems like I was wandering among the snakes and the rocks for a coon's age, so I was so tuckered out I just curled up against a bush and went to sleep. Pretty soon I commenced to dreaming I was at home with my very own dear mama, sitting around the fire all toasty warm, and she was cooking something nice. Then I woke up, and there was the orphan Sweetness, and a campfire, and that little tyke was a toasted marshmallows. "Want one?" she says. "Well, doesn't that just beat all?" "Now looky here, Sweetness," I says to her while I was gobbling down those marshmallows. "This is the second time I done saved you, and I very much appreciate it if you'd stay saved. So we're going to mosey on back to that there orphanage right now." Well, I'll be darned if she didn't start to cry. "Don't you like me?" she asked. "Why, sure I do, honey. Ain't I saved you twice? There's nothing to cry about." And she went right on bawling. "I ain't got no ma," says she. "I ain't got no pa. All I got is Miss Sump and a toothbrush." "Well, ain't no way to fix that lesson you gets adopted," I explained. Then she smiled up in my face like she was expecting me to say something particular. It was too deep for me. "It sure is a dilemma," was all I could come up with to say, at which she throwed up her little hands in the air and stomped off into the night. "Dang," says I, "now you quit that. You really try my patience." But I was going to bring the orphan back if it hair lift the governor. Sorry, I didn't know what that was. So there was the sun rising over the plains, and there I was feeling like something that was chewed up and spit out, trying to find one little orphan in the big Wild West. Now here comes the exciting part. I'd gone far enough to work up a good sweat, so I ambled over a big rock so I can stand in the shade. Then I heard the sound. Just a little click, like a gun being cocked. I turned around, and what I see but Coyote Pete, loading for bear and giving me a look that would freeze a cat. I had to think fast. Coyote Pete, I told him, you can see by the star on my chest here that I is here to uphold the law. Now you can't go around shooting folks and scaring orphans. I'm here to arrest you. Now it doesn't seem like he heard what I said, because just as cool as you please, he aimed his 6-shooter right at my star. Listen here, hamster brain, I says. You're riding for a fall. You put down that there gun or I'm going to knock you into the middle of next week. I'm going to snatch you bald-headed. I'm going to lock you up and throw away the key. Wonder what's going on there. And you know what he done? He done made us sound like thump and fell over backwards, laid out cold like a sack of feed. I scared him that bad. And who should show up just then but Sweetness? She took off her hair ribbons and we tied that varmint up bulletproof and pig tight. Now, Sweetness, I told her, I ain't having no more of this running away. You can't go roaming around this here prairie with outlaws all over the place. It's too dangerous. How many times do I gotta save you? If you were as smart as you are brave, you could figure out how to save me good, she said, looking me right in the eye. There we stood, having a kind of staring contest. What you leading up to, says I. Think, says she. So I chewed on it a while longer. Do it have something to do with adopting? You're getting it, she says. I was starting to get a kind of pretty picture up in my head regarding me and little Sweetness and a couple of rocking chairs by the fire. Well, sweet child, I says to her, I know I was a rough character, but if you would agree to it, I guess I would adopt you. Ha, says she. And she fell on me like grandma on a chicken snake. Then me and Sweetness rolled that varmint all the way back to town. Now here come the ending. That very day, I done signed those adoption papers. Then that precious child told me about the 7 other orphanages and how their little toothbrushes were worn down with all that scrubbing. So I adopted them too. As to Coyote Pete, we put him in jail, and I got a big reward for bringing that varmint to justice. After a few years, they let him out and put him in the custody of a parole officer. And this was none other than Mrs. Sump, who, as you can see, was out of the orphan business. And I don't know how she done it, but she got that desperado to marry her, and now all he does is scrub that floor. And I can tell you, he jumps when she hollers frog. And that's the truth. Now, my darlings, there is a sequel to this, written, of course, by the same author. It's called Raising Sweetness, and it is about the sheriff and the 7 orphans. And I have to say, it's very funny. He has some great house cleaning tips like washing windows with peanut butter. I highly recommend this. You can find this, that, and this book here in the library. Have a great day.